Went from getting head in the White House to this, Bill. Look at you on your knees begging. Bishop shook his head. You're pathetic. Bill said, Come on now. We go way back. Look at all we built together. You couldn't have done this without me. Bishop laughed. The two men standing behind Bill grinned. Bill, you always did make me laugh. It was your wife who was the useful one, though. She made things happen. At least until she was buffaloed by the orange man. Too bad she's not here. Bishop pulled a pistol and shot Bill in the head. He said, Get that out of here. Feed it to the bloodroot in the garden. They haven't eaten in a while. The two men standing behind Bill picked up his lifeless body and hauled him out of Bishop's office. He looked down at the blood and gore on his floor. As long as I've known you, I'm always cleaning up your messes, Bill. He walked over to his desk and sat down, pushed a button on the phone, and said, Hilda, could you send someone up to clean up this mess? Hilda's voice said, Right away, sir. Bishop got up and walked over to the large windows that overlooked the east side of the estate. He could see the vast gardens that stretched out into the distance. All kinds of exotic plant life thrived there. He could see his two security men approaching the edge of the bloodroot patch with Bill's body. They cautiously stepped as close as they dared and swung his body as far into the patch as they could. It barely hit the ground before the bloodroot's tendrils shot up from the dirt and entangled him. There was nothing better for disposing of dead bodies. Bishop sneered in delight as he watched it pull Bill underground. A justified fate for defiling one of his young brides. He knew it was a mistake letting Bill come here to the estate. The lecherous old man couldn't keep it in his pants, not even on pain of death. He was warned those 6 girls were consecrated for Bishop. Now he would have to find a replacement for the one Bill defiled. It was a shame he had to kill the girl. She was quite lovely. A buzzing from the phone on his desk snapped him out of his brooding. He walked over and pressed the button. Yes, what is it? Hilda said, Sorry to disturb you, sir. Mr. Hernandez is here to see you. That's fine. Send him in. Bishop opened a drawer and grabbed a cigar. He slid the ring off and used a cutter to snip the end. He grabbed a match from a box in the same drawer and lit it. He leaned back, puffed, and blew a cloud of smoke. There was a knock at the door. Bishop told them to enter. Hilda opened the door and held it open for Hernandez. He walked in and Bishop gestured to the chairs in front of his desk. Hernandez walked over to the chairs, startling when he saw the blood and gore on the floor. He composed himself and sat down. Bishop said, Thank you, Hilda. She bowed and closed the door behind her. Bishop sat and puffed on his cigar, watching Hernandez. He used to be the Secretary of Homeland Security, a position he held solely because Bishop pulled the strings to get him there. He was useful then. He was very helpful in causing the collapse, but his usefulness was waning of late. Hernandez shifted in his chair uncomfortably. He cleared his throat. He said, It's good to see you, Bishop. You're looking better than ever. Bishop didn't reply. He stared at him, took a long drag of his cigar. He blew a cloud of smoke that engulfed Hernandez. The man tried not to cough, but only managed to bark out several suppressed coughs. He was noticeably nervous now. He said, You're probably wondering why I came to see you. I just wanted to... Bishop held up his hand. Hernandez stopped talking. His eyes shifted from side to side. Bishop knew exactly why he was here. He was coming to grovel. He had led a failed campaign to quell the resistance movements in the eastern part of the country. Not only has the resistance grown, but they have launched counteroffensive, tearing down the infrastructure he meticulously put in place over several decades leading up to the collapse. Bishop took another puff on his cigar, then held it up for Hernandez to see. He asked, You know where I get these? Hernandez cleared his throat and said, Are those Cubans? Bishop scoffed. These make Cuban cigars seem like 99-cent white owls. He held the cigar up in front of him. These are a treasure worth far more than gold, diamonds, or expensive real estate. This is not tobacco. It's the leaf of a plant called dream flower. It only grows in one place, the ancient land of Atlan. Have you been to Atlan? Hernandez stammered. I don't think... No, I guess you wouldn't have. How about Lemuria? Agartha? Hernandez stared blankly and shook his head. He said, I'm not familiar. Bishop nodded. No, I suppose you wouldn't be. Way above your pay grade. Bishop took a deep pull on his cigar while staring him in the eyes. A shimmering form took shape behind Hernandez. The dream flower was taking effect. The form darkened and came into focus as a shadow in the form of a man with glowing purple eyes. It was one of the emissaries of the master. Hernandez smiled nervously and cleared his throat again. Bishop enjoyed watching these government goons squirm. They all thought they wielded power, but they were only concerned with wealth. They had no idea what the real power in this world was. He knew it all too well. Hernandez said, Sir, I wanted to... Bishop interrupted. Alex, why are you here? I was coming to tell you. Bishop leaned forward and said, You're supposed to be personally overseeing operations to secure the O'Hare National Forest. Yes, sir, but from what I understand, the O'Hare has become a bastion of freedom. That's not exactly... Bishop wouldn't let the worm finish. The suburban neighborhoods in the north are a resistance stronghold. They have all but shut down our work camps and comfort houses in the area. We are still looking into... The southern part is a war zone. Resistance forces, militias, and freedom fighters are dug into those hills like mole rats, with more joining their ranks every day. We believe that now this legend of some killer in the forest called the Reaper has our child grabbers afraid to do their jobs. And even worse, our adrenochrome operations are almost at a standstill. The master is not pleased. At the mention of the master, Hernandez went white. Sweat beaded his forehead and he fidgeted with his tie. The fear coming off the man smelt delicious. He stared at Bishop and licked his lips. Bishop said, Well, what do you have to say for yourself? Hernandez cleared his throat and croaked out, I know news coming from the area seems bad, but I assure you we have everything under control. The resistance is contained in their areas. We're working to cut off their supply lines, and we have several spies embedded in their camps. Trust me, sir, the master can count on me. I'll get things back on track. He smiled weakly. The dark form of the emissary still standing behind him placed his hands on his shoulders. He shivered and turned his head to look behind him. He couldn't see the entity, but no doubt felt his presence. The emissary spoke to Bishop. He said, Everything he said is a lie. I can taste it pouring out of him. Bishop nodded and said, Of course, although he did so to affirm what the emissary said. Hernandez thought it was to affirm him. The pathetic man let out a sigh of relief. Bishop played along. He reached into his drawer and pulled out another cigar. He removed the ring and cut it, handing it to Hernandez. The emissary said, Yes, give him to me. Bishop said, I know you won't let us down, Alex. That's why I placed you in this position. You're a man who gets things done. Bishop struck a match and lit the cigar. Hernandez said, Thank you, sir. I appreciate your confidence in me. And thank you for this cigar. The flavor is fantastic. You're right, Cubans can't compare. He took a long puff and blew a cloud of smoke. Bishop watched with satisfied grin. It wouldn't be long before it began to take effect. He sat on the edge of his desk and said, So, tell me what it's going to take to get things under control. Hernandez took another puff and said, I'm glad you asked. That's one of the reasons I came to see you in person. I wanted to assure you that even though the situation looks bad, we have it well under hand. And also to ask for the resources. Bishop said, I see. And what resources specifically do you need? I think if you can reassign one of the military units stationed in the west under my command, say one of the mechanized infantry units or maybe even an armor battalion, with a few Apaches for support. We also need a full resupply of munitions, from small arms to heavy artillery, a couple 100,000 gallons of fuel, also another 6 months of food and medical supplies. With this, we can not only secure the national forest, but crush the resistance. Hernandez leaned back in his chair and puffed on his cigar triumphantly. Bishop was amused. This fool thought he could walk in here after he wasted billions of dollars of equipment, fuel, and supplies, and not only ask for more, but ask for twice as much. None of the military assets could be reassigned. They're all entangled in fighting off invasions from the Sino-Russian alliance in the northwest and the cartels in the south. Not one man could be spared to clean up this idiot's mess. No, he would be replaced. Bishop patted him on the shoulder and said, "Done. I'll make the arrangements." He held out his hand, and Hernandez shook, grinning from ear to ear. Bishop pulled him out of the chair and put his arm around his shoulder. He said, "Come on, let's go into the study and have a drink before you leave." He gestured to the large ornate door across the room. It was framed in intricately carved dark wooden molding and had large symbols carved into its surface. The doorknob was carved out of a single piece of polished onyx stone. Hernandez said, "I would love a drink." They walked across the room. Bishop asked, "How you liking the cigar?" Hernandez took another puff and said, "It's amazing. I can see why it's called Dream Flower. I feel like I'm in a dream." They stood in front of the door. Bishop put his hand on the knob. He smiled and said, "That's exactly what it does. It opens up the mind to another reality. The thing is, not all dreams are nice. Some are nightmares." He opened the door, and a dark void greeted them. 2 purple eyes appeared, and the emissary grabbed Hernandez and pulled him into the darkness. The dark door slammed shut. Bishop laughed and walked away. Hernandez's screams echoed and then faded away. He said, "Bloodroot isn't the only way to disappear a body." He looked down at the blood from Bill and frowned. "It's less messy as well." He walked to his desk and pressed a button on his phone. "Hilda, is it clean up here?" "Yes, sir." "Send them in. And find Raven. Have him call me immediately." Hilda said, "Yes, sir," right away. Bishop put his cigar out in the ashtray on his desk. He said, "I believe it's time for a visit to my young brides-to-be." He walked over to the large ornate door and turned the onyx knob. Bright daylight poured from inside. Bishop walked in and closed the door behind him.